Okay, hey everyone. I'm Stephanie, and I'm 27 years old, coming to you today from Sacramento. You know, sometimes life throws you curveballs that you just don't see coming, not from the direction they arrive from, anyway. We all have those people in our lives, don't we? The ones you think you can absolutely count on, the ones you love, the ones whose happiness you prioritize, sometimes even over your own. For me, one of those people was someone I was incredibly close to, someone whose wedding I was supposed to stand beside as she said, I do. I was a bridesmaid. Not just a bridesmaid, but someone who had been there through thick and thin. Someone who had already invested a significant amount of time, energy, and yes, money into this role. We're talking dress fittings, bachelorette party planning, and funding, of course, bridal shower organizing, endless group chats, and just generally being on call for emotional support and running errands. It's a commitment, right? And I took that commitment seriously. I genuinely wanted her day to be perfect. Things felt a little off sometimes, little moments that I brushed aside because, well, that's what you do when you love someone and you want to be supportive. You make allowances. You tell yourself it's just wedding stress, or that you're overthinking things. But those little moments added up, little paper cuts on the surface of a relationship I thought was solid. Then came the big one. A conversation, just days before the wedding, that felt less like a heart-to-heart and more like a sudden, unexpected amputation from her life, at least from this significant part of it. Just like that, I was out, no longer needed. Discarded from the bridal party with barely an explanation that made sense. The shock was immense. The hurt was immediate and deep. But what happened next? That's what really twisted the knife. See, even after being told I wasn't standing up there with her, even after the awkward, painful fallout of being uninvited from the most central role, I discovered that somehow, amidst all that emotional chaos, I was still financially on the hook. Charges for the bridesmaid dress I would no longer wear, for the spa day I wouldn't attend, for contributions to things I was now excluded from. My card, it turned out, was still very much in the bridal party loop, even though I wasn't. It was more than just the money, although, let's be clear, it was a significant amount for me at the time. It was the principle. It was the stark, undeniable proof that I wasn't just surplus to requirements emotionally, I was also apparently just a resource to be tapped financially, even after I was deemed disposable. It felt cold. It felt calculated. It felt like the ultimate betrayal, revealing a dynamic in our relationship that I hadn't allowed myself to fully see before. This story isn't just about a wedding and a bridesmaid dress, though. It's about what happens when you're faced with a betrayal that forces you to look at who you've been in a relationship and who you need to become to protect yourself. It's about finding your voice when you've been silent for too long, about setting boundaries even when it feels like you're standing completely alone. I'm going to share how this moment, as painful and humiliating as it was, became a turning point for me. How it led me to reclaim my self-worth, to understand the value of my own time, energy, and resources, and to ultimately build a life where my needs aren't just an afterthought. It wasn't easy, and the fallout was messy, but I promise you, finding that strength within yourself is worth navigating the storm. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from, and if you've ever experienced a moment where you realized someone you trusted saw you as less than you believed you were. My life before the wedding drama felt, on the surface, entirely normal. I was Stephanie, 27 years old, living in Sacramento. I had a decent job that paid the bills, a comfortable little apartment, and a close circle of friends and family. I prided myself on being reliable, on being the one people could turn to. If someone needed a ride, I was there. If someone needed help moving, I showed up. If a friend needed to vent for hours, I listened. It was who I was. It felt good to be needed, good to be the dependable one. Looking back now, with the clarity that only distance and pain can bring, I understand that dependable had slowly morphed into exploitable without me even noticing. The bride in question was my older sister, Sarah. We were close, or so I thought. Sarah was always the more outgoing, the more demanding one, the one who naturally commanded attention. I was the quieter sister, content to support from the sidelines, to be her sounding board, her helper. This dynamic wasn't new, it was the fabric of our sisterhood since childhood. She was the star, and I was the reliable supporting cast. It worked, in its own way. It meant I rarely felt truly seen or heard, but it also meant I avoided conflict, something I desperately disliked. My ingrained aversion to confrontation meant I often swallowed my opinions, my needs, and even my hurts, for the sake of keeping the peace, especially with Sarah. When she announced her engagement to her long-term boyfriend, Mark, there was genuine joy. Planning a wedding felt like a natural extension of our relationship dynamic. Sarah would envision, and I would execute. She immediately asked me to be a bridesmaid, and I said yes without hesitation. Of course I would. I was her sister. It felt like an honor, a sign of our closeness, validation of my place in her life. The initial excitement was real. Pinterest boards were shared, color palettes debated, venue options discussed endlessly. My role quickly expanded beyond just showing up in a dress. I was the designated researcher for vendors, the keeper of spreadsheets, the organizer of group activities. Sarah had a large bridal party, 6 bridesmaids in total, but it often felt like I was her de facto maid of honor, handling tasks that were usually assigned to the chief bridesmaid, who was actually her college friend, Jessica. Jessica lived out of state, and, while lovely, wasn't as readily available as I was, living just 20 minutes away. I didn't mind, at first. It felt important. It felt like I was contributing in a meaningful way. The expenses started piling up almost immediately. There was the non-refundable deposit for the bridesmaid dresses, a specific, expensive designer number Sarah had her heart set on. Then came the travel costs for the bachelorette party weekend in Palm Springs. Flights, accommodation, activities, all split amongst the bridesmaids. Sarah's share was heavily subsidized, of course, because she was the bride. It felt like a significant outlay for me, but I reasoned it was part of the commitment. Everyone pitched in. Except it didn't always feel equal. There were last-minute demands, unexpected costs for decorations or personalized gifts for Sarah that I often ended up covering initially and then had to chase people for reimbursement or just absorbed myself when it felt too awkward to ask. The spa day was Sarah's idea for a pre-wedding bonding experience. A fancy place downtown, massages, facials, mimosas. It sounded lovely, a moment of pampering amidst the chaos. Sarah booked it, requiring each bridesmaid's credit card details up front to hold the spots and apparently prepay a portion. I handed over mine without a second thought. Why wouldn't I? I was a bridesmaid. This was part of the package. As the wedding date drew closer, it was just a little over 2 weeks away. The stress levels escalated dramatically. Sarah became more demanding, her tone sharper. Little things I did or didn't do seemed to set her off. I remember one specific argument about the placement of ribbons on the wedding favors. It was a small detail, easily fixed, but she reacted with an intensity that felt disproportionate, accusing me of not caring enough about her day. I apologized profusely, even though I didn't feel I had done anything wrong. My go-to response: smooth things over, avoid conflict, make it right. There were other signs, too, that I chose to ignore. Whispers amongst some of the other bridesmaids about Sarah being particularly difficult. The way she sometimes spoke to me in front of them, a casual dismissal of my suggestions, or a public critique of something I'd done, always delivered with a thin veneer of humor that made it impossible to call out without seeming overly sensitive. I told myself she was stressed. Brides were allowed to be stressed. Then came the day everything changed. It was a Tuesday evening, 10 days before the wedding. I was at home, packing a small bag for a final dress fitting the next day, mentally running through the last-minute tasks on my list. My phone rang. It was Sarah. Her voice on the other end was tight, strained. "Hey," I said, trying to sound cheerful. "Everything okay? Just packing for tomorrow." There was a pause, A heavy, uncomfortable silence. Then, she spoke. Steph, listen. This is hard, but, look, I need to talk to you about something. My stomach immediately clenched. This wasn't a ribbon placement conversation. This was different. Okay? I prompted, my voice small. It's about the bridal party, she said, rushing the words out like she wanted to get them over with. Things are just really stressful right now. And honestly, I'm realizing that maybe this wasn't the right fit. What wasn't the right fit? I asked, genuinely confused. You, she said, her voice softening slightly, but the words were a blow. Being a bridesmaid. Look, Steph, you've been amazing, really. So helpful. But, she trailed off. But what? My voice was trembling now, despite my best efforts to control it. But I think it's adding to the stress. She finally finished, sounding almost apologetic, but the message was clear. I need things to be really smooth, really positive, and I just don't think this is working. I stood frozen, the small bag for the dress fitting dangling from my hand. You want me out of the bridal party. The words felt alien, impossible. 10 days before the wedding. After everything. It's not like that, she insisted, her tone shifting to defensive. It's just simplifying things, making it easier. You can still come to the wedding, of course, and the reception. I still want you there. But, not standing with you? I whispered. Right. Just be a guest. It'll be less pressure on you too, honestly. Less pressure on me? Was she serious? The pressure I felt was the pressure to meet her endless expectations, to constantly perform support and enthusiasm even when I was exhausted or hurt. I couldn't speak. My mind was reeling. Why? What had I done? Had I finally failed one too many times? Was it the ribbon thing? Was it something else entirely? The lack of a clear reason, the vagueness, somehow made it worse. It felt arbitrary, a sudden decision based on her stress, with no consideration for my feelings or the effort I had poured in. Steph, are you there? Yeah, I managed, my voice flat. I'm here. Look, I know this is sudden, but I really think it's for the best. It'll make the day less complicated. Less complicated for her. The central theme of our relationship, laid bare in a single phone call. My role was to make her life less complicated, even if it meant complicating mine infinitely. Okay, I said, the word feeling like ash in my mouth. What else was there to say? Beg? Plead? Demand an explanation she clearly wasn't going to give? My people-pleasing instincts warred with a sudden, sharp surge of humiliation and hurt. The conflict avoider in me won the immediate battle. Okay, Sarah. Great, she said, a terrible false brightness returning to her voice. It was clear she thought the hard part was over. So, I'll see you at the ceremony then. You'll have a seat with Mom and Dad. A seat with Mom and Dad. Not beside her as she started her new life, but tucked away with the parents. The symbolism was not lost on me. I was being relegated, downgraded. Yeah, I repeated, still numb. See you there. We hung up. The bag for the dress fitting slipped from my grasp and landed on the floor with a soft thud. I stood there in my living room, the silence amplifying the ringing in my ears, the sudden emptiness in my chest. 10 days. 10 days before the wedding, and I was out. Just like that. All the time, all the effort, all the emotional energy, erased. It felt like a physical punch. I spent the rest of that evening in a haze of hurt and confusion. I replayed the conversation in my head, searching for clues, for a reason that made sense. Had I offended someone? Had I messed up something unforgivable? Or was it truly just about her stress, about trimming the fat, and I was the easiest one to cut? The lack of closure gnawed at me. Sleep was impossible. My mind raced, fueled by a mixture of anger and profound sadness. It wasn't just about being dropped from a wedding party. It was about the casual way it was done, the apparent disregard for my feelings, the implication that my presence in that role was a burden rather than a support. It chipped away at the foundation of what I thought our relationship was. The next morning, still feeling raw and exhausted, I went through the motions of getting ready for work. As I scrolled through my phone, avoiding eye contact with my own reflection in the mirror, I saw a notification from my banking app. A charge notification. It was for the spa day, the one I was now not attending. My breath hitched. The spa day. Sarah had collected card details from everyone, and clearly hadn't bothered to remove mine, or inform the spa that I wouldn't be there, or even consider reimbursing me. The charge was significant, several $100s. It wasn't just the spa, there was another charge pending from the dress shop. The dress I was no longer wearing. That's when the numbness broke, replaced by a hot, searing anger. It wasn't just an emotional betrayal, it was a financial one too. They didn't want me in the bridal party, but they were perfectly happy to keep my money. It felt incredibly unfair, a final insult layered onto the wound. This wasn't just a mistake, it felt deliberate, or at the very least, breathtakingly thoughtless. It highlighted, in the most stark way possible, how little my contribution, my feelings, and even my money seemed to matter to her. I stared at the charges on my screen, my fingers shaking. The hurt solidified into something harder, something colder. This wasn't just about a wedding roll, it was about value. Or rather, my perceived lack of it in her eyes. I had given freely of my time, my energy, my resources, often putting myself last, because I believed in the relationship, in the bond of sisterhood. And in return, I had been deemed unnecessary, yet still expected to pay for the privilege of being excluded. The injustice of it was overwhelming. I thought back to all the times I'd gone out of my way for Sarah, big and small. The weekends spent helping her move, the late-night phone calls talking through her relationship drama, the times I'd lent her money she was slow to repay, the emotional labor of constantly anticipating her needs and trying to meet them to avoid conflict. It felt like a lifetime of being the supportive one, the understanding one, the one who swallowed her own feelings to keep the peace. And this was the payoff. I typed out a text to Sarah, my fingers clumsy with emotion. "Hey, I just saw charges for the spa day, and the dress came through on my card. Since I'm not in the bridal party anymore, can you let me know when I can expect to be reimbursed?" I waited. And waited. Hours passed. No response. She was clearly avoiding it. The silence stretched, thick with her passive refusal to acknowledge the situation she had created. This wasn't just an oversight. This was her hoping I wouldn't notice, or wouldn't bring it up, or would just let it go. It was another instance of the long-standing pattern. Sarah takes, and I give, and my needs are invisible. The lack of response fueled my anger. It wasn't just the money anymore, it was the principle, it was the disrespect. I drafted another text, stronger this time, then deleted it. Conflict avoidance was still deeply ingrained, but the pain of this betrayal felt different. It was sharper, more targeted, because it hit me in the gut and the wallet. It forced me to confront the reality of our dynamic in a way I couldn't ignore. I decided to call a friend, Emily. Emily wasn't tied into our family drama, and she was always a voice of reason. I explained what had happened, my voice breaking as I recounted the phone call and the charges. Emily listened patiently, her quiet support a balm to my raw nerves. "Steph," she said gently when I finished, that's really messed up, on so many levels. I don't understand," I choked out. "How can she do that, after everything?" "It's not about you, Steph," Emily said, echoing words I'd heard before but never truly absorbed. "It's about her, her stress, her self-centeredness. But keeping your money after kicking you out? That's just low." "What do I do?" I asked, feeling lost. "Do I just ask for the money back? Do I confront her about why she kicked me out? I don't want to cause a scene, not right before her wedding." "She already caused the scene, Steph," Emily pointed out gently but firmly. "By dropping you, by keeping your money, your feelings, your time, your money, they matter. You have every right to ask for that money back. It's not being difficult, it's asking for what's fair. Her words were a lifeline. It's asking for what's fair. Such a simple concept, yet one I had so often overlooked in my relationships, especially with Sarah. My ingrained belief was that asking for what I needed, asserting my rights, was being selfish or difficult. Emily's perspective began to chip away at that belief. We talked for a long time that night. Emily helped me see the pattern, not just in this incident, but in my wider relationship with Sarah, and even other people in my life. The times I'd been the rescuer, the fixer, the silent absorber of others' emotional baggage and financial convenience. I had built an identity around being easygoing and helpful, but the cost was my own well-being and self-respect. The next morning, fueled by Emily's support and a simmering resentment, I sent another text to Sarah. Sarah, I need you to respond about the charges. The spa day was amount, the dress was amount, total is total amount. Since I'm no longer a bridesmaid, I expect to be reimbursed for these immediately. I didn't ask. I stated my expectation. It felt terrifying and strangely empowering. The response came back quickly this time. Ugh, Steph, can't you see how stressed I am? It's just money. We'll sort it out after the wedding. It's just money. The casual dismissal was like a physical blow. It wasn't just money. It was my money, earned with my time and effort, spent on something I was now excluded from. It was the tangible representation of the value she placed, or didn't place, on me. No, Sarah, I typed back, my fingers moving with a new kind of resolve. I need to sort it out now. These are significant costs, and they were incurred for a role I no longer have. Please send the money today. The next text was defensive. Seriously? You're doing this now? Right before my wedding? Trying to stress me out even more? The classic deflection. Turning my legitimate request into an accusation against me. She was trying to weaponize her wedding, her stress, to manipulate me into backing down, into feeling guilty for asking for what was mine. I took a deep breath. Don't engage with the guilt trip. Stick to the facts. Stick to the boundary. This isn't about stressing you out, Sarah. It's about fairness. I paid for things related to being a bridesmaid. I am no longer a bridesmaid. I need to be reimbursed. Please send the money today. More silence. Then, a Venmo notification. The full amount appeared in my account. No accompanying text, no apology, nothing. Just the cold transfer of funds. The money was back, but the transaction felt hollow. It wasn't a resolution, it was merely the removal of a specific financial injustice. The deeper wound, the betrayal of trust, and the clear devaluation of our relationship, remained. That night, I didn't sleep well again, but the quality of my sleeplessness had changed. It wasn't just confusion and hurt anymore. It was a storm of conflicting emotions, anger, sadness, resentment, but also a tiny spark of pride. I had done it. I had stood up for myself, calmly and firmly, even when she tried to manipulate me. It was a small victory, but it felt monumental. The days leading up to the wedding were strange. I declined attending the rehearsal dinner, explaining that I felt uncomfortable after being removed from the bridal party. This was met with frosty silence from Sarah and awkward discomfort from my parents, who seemed to want to pretend nothing had happened. My decision not to attend was another small act of boundary setting, of honoring my own feelings over maintaining a facade of normalcy for everyone else's comfort. I did attend the wedding ceremony, sitting in the designated seat with my parents. It felt surreal. Watching the bridal party walk down the aisle, seeing the empty spot where I would have been, a pang of sadness hit me. But it was intertwined with the clear understanding that I didn't belong up there anymore, not after everything. Sarah looked beautiful, radiant. I offered her a polite smile afterwards. The interaction was brief and strained. She didn't mention what had happened, neither did I. The reception was a blur of forced smiles and awkward conversations. People who knew I had been a bridesmaid either avoided eye contact or offered hesitant, sympathetic glances. I felt like an outsider, an uncomfortable reminder of the messy reality Sarah had tried to sweep under the rug. I didn't stay late. I made my excuses and left, driving home in the quiet darkness, a profound sense of loneliness settling over me. But beneath the loneliness was a fragile sense of peace. I had navigated the event, stayed true to myself by not pretending everything was okay, and survived. The weeks that followed were difficult. The immediate aftermath of setting boundaries in a toxic system often involves pushback. Sarah was distant, hurt by my refusal to pretend things were fine. She didn't call, didn't text. My parents, caught in the middle and fundamentally conflict-averse themselves, encouraged me to just let it go and mend things with Sarah. They didn't fully grasp the depth of the betrayal, the pattern of behavior that had led to this breaking point. Their priority was family harmony, even if it meant glossing over real pain and injustice. This pressure to reconcile, to prioritize her feelings and the family's comfort over my own healing, was a familiar burden. It was the same pressure that had kept me silent and compliant for years. But something had shifted within me. The pain of the betrayal, combined with the small victories of standing up for myself, had solidified a new resolve. I couldn't go back to being the person I was before. The cost was too high. I started talking to a therapist. This was a crucial step. In therapy, I began to unpack years of ingrained patterns, the people-pleasing, the fear of conflict, the need for external validation, the way I had defined my worth by how useful I was to others, especially my family. The therapist helped me understand that Sarah's behavior wasn't a reflection of my worth, but a reflection of her own issues with control, entitlement, and lack of empathy. I learned that setting boundaries wasn't selfish, it was an act of self-preservation and self-respect. It was a slow, often painful process. There were days filled with sadness, grieving the loss of the sisterhood I thought I had, the idealized version of our relationship. There was anger, simmering beneath the surface, at the unfairness of it all. There was guilt, the lingering echo of years of being told I was too sensitive or too dramatic. But, gradually, the good days started to outnumber the bad. I began to redefine my relationships, to prioritize connections that were reciprocal, where there was mutual respect and support. I practiced saying no to requests that felt like obligations rather than genuine acts of kindness. I learned to identify the familiar tug of guilt and resist its pull. I created physical and emotional distance from Sarah. I responded to her infrequent, superficial messages politely, but without engaging in the deep emotional connection that had once defined our relationship. I stopped being her go-to person for favors. When family gatherings happened, I attended, but I no longer put pressure on myself to manage the dynamics or ensure Sarah was happy. I focused on connecting with other family members genuinely and allowed myself to leave when I felt overwhelmed or uncomfortable. The change in my behavior inevitably caused friction. Sarah perceived my boundaries as rejection. She sometimes lashed out, accusing me of being cold or unforgiving. Other family members expressed concern or confusion. It was painful to navigate, but my therapist reminded me that this was the cost of changing an unhealthy system. The system resists the change, and the person initiating the change often becomes the target of that resistance. I held firm. I wasn't trying to punish Sarah. I was trying to protect myself. I wasn't demanding an apology, though it would have been nice. I was demanding my own right to emotional safety and respect. The money reimbursed was just the first step. The real journey was reclaiming my own agency. I started investing the time and energy I had previously spent on Sarah and others into myself. I picked up old hobbies I had neglected. I focused on my career and found satisfaction in achieving things independently. I nurtured friendships that were built on mutual support and understanding. I even took a solo trip, something I never would have done before, always feeling the need to be available for others. Slowly, my self-worth began to rebuild, not based on how much I did for others, but on who I was, what I valued, and how I treated myself. The image of being dropped from the bridal party, once a symbol of humiliation and rejection, began to transform in my mind. It became the catalyst, the wake-up call that forced me to see the truth of the situation and liberate myself from a dynamic that was slowly eroding my spirit. The financial aspect remained a stark reminder, but it also served as a powerful motivator. Every time I felt the urge to slip back into old patterns, to overgive or people please, I remembered those charges on my bank statement, the cold, transactional nature of that interaction. It hardened my resolve, my resources, my time, my energy. They were valuable, and I deserved to be treated with respect. The wedding day itself faded in significance. It was just one day, one event. The real story was the transformation that happened because of it. I learned that it's okay to not be everyone's savior or fixer. It's okay to prioritize your own peace and well-being. It's okay to walk away from relationships, even family, if they are consistently harmful or disrespectful. The relationship with Sarah is irrevocably changed. We are sisters by blood, but the closeness, the automatic bond I once felt, is gone. It's been replaced by a cautious distance, a polite formality. We see each other at family gatherings, but we don't confide in each other anymore. We don't rely on each other. It's a loss, and there are still moments of sadness about it, but it's a necessary distance for my own health. I no longer feel that constant pressure, that underlying anxiety of waiting for the next demand or the next slight. My life feels quieter, but also more solid, built on a foundation of self-respect rather than fragile validation from others. I'm no longer the dependable doormat. I'm just Stephanie, navigating life with clearer eyes and stronger boundaries. The cost of silence, I learned, was my own happiness and identity. The price of speaking up and setting boundaries was painful, but the reward, freedom, was immeasurable. It's funny how sometimes the biggest moments of growth come from the deepest wounds. Being dropped from a wedding party, charged for services I wouldn't receive, felt like the end of the world at the time. But in reality, it was just the end of a chapter where I wasn't fully the author of my own story. And the next chapter, that one, I'm writing myself. So, looking back now, sitting here in Sacramento, feeling grounded in a way I never did before, I can see the path clearly. The girl who automatically said yes, who absorbed costs and swallowed pain, isn't gone, but she's not in charge anymore. She's been replaced by someone who understands her worth, who isn't afraid to say no, and who knows that the most important relationship she has is with herself. Being removed from that wedding party felt like a public declaration of my inadequacy, a sign that I wasn't good enough. But the truth was, I wasn't inadequate. I was undervalued. And there's a huge difference. I learned that I don't need someone else's approval or a specific role in their life to validate my worth. My worth is inherent. It's not conditional on my usefulness or my willingness to sacrifice my own needs. The experience also taught me a lot about family dynamics and the silent expectations that can exist, especially for women. The expectation to be the caregiver, the emotional support, the one who keeps the peace, often at her own expense. I saw how easily that could turn into being taken for granted, your contributions invisible until you stopped making them. And sometimes, even when you stop, they still try to extract a cost. Healing wasn't linear. There were setbacks, moments of doubt, times when I second-guessed myself and wondered if I had overreacted, if I should have just let the money go and tried to smooth things over. But then I would remember the feeling of seeing those charges, the casual indifference to my financial burden and emotional hurt, and the resolve would return. My feelings were valid. My boundaries were necessary. I learned to communicate differently. Instead of hinting at my needs or hoping others would notice when I was struggling, I started stating things clearly and directly. It felt awkward at first, even aggressive, because I was so used to minimizing myself. But I realized that clear communication, while sometimes leading to conflict with people who weren't used to me having a voice, ultimately built healthier relationships with those who respected it. The relationships that weathered this storm are the ones I cherish most now. The friends who listened without judgment, who validated my experience, and who reminded me of my strength. They weren't telling me what I wanted to hear, they were telling me what I needed to hear. They are my chosen family, the people who see me, value me, and respect my boundaries. I think about the dress sometimes, hanging somewhere in a closet maybe, never worn by me down that aisle. I think about the spa day, the relaxation I missed out on. But I also think about the freedom I gained. I didn't just get my money back, I got a piece of myself back. The piece I had given away, little by little, over years of trying to earn love and acceptance by being the good one, the easy one, the self-sacrificing one. This journey has been challenging, but it has also been incredibly liberating. It stripped away illusions and forced me to build something real in their place, a life and an identity rooted in self-respect and authenticity. I am no longer afraid of conflict as much as I am afraid of losing myself again. I am no longer willing to pay, financially or emotionally, for a seat at a table where I am not truly valued. My life now feels calmer, more aligned with my own values. I have more energy, more peace of mind. I'm still the person who shows up for people I care about, but now, it's a conscious choice, not a default setting born of insecurity or fear. I understand that my capacity to help others is greatest when I am not depleted myself. I used to measure my worth by how much I gave. Now, I understand that true worth isn't measured in sacrifices or services rendered, but in self-respect and the quality of the connections you build with people who genuinely see and appreciate you. The wedding was a turning point, a painful catalyst that forced me onto a path I might never have found otherwise, and for that, strangely enough, I am grateful. Thank you for listening to my story. It's one that's been hard to tell, but also necessary for my own healing. If you've ever felt undervalued, overlooked, or taken advantage of by someone you love, especially family, please know that you are not alone. Your feelings are valid, and you have the right to set boundaries and reclaim your own life. It's not easy, and there will be fallout, but your peace and self-worth are worth fighting for. If this story resonated with you, please give this video a like. It helps more people find these stories and know they aren't alone. Subscribe to my channel if you'd like to hear more about my journey and the lessons I'm learning along the way, and I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Have you ever had to draw a line in the sand with family or a close friend? How did you navigate it? Remember, you are enough, just as you are, with or without anyone else's approval. Your worth is not up for negotiation. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you in the next video.